The scream of the train split the prairie in two. Then, silence. The kind that feels alive, breathing, watching. Dust rose in a trembling cloud where the wheels had just thundered past, and in that dust lay a woman, twisted against the cold earth. Her turquoise dress was torn, the fabric streaked with mud and blood. One shoe was missing. Her dark hair fanned across the dirt like spilled ink. The world did not stop for her. The whistle grew faint, fading toward the horizon until even that small proof of civilization was gone. She was alone. Her name, once spoken with pride, now trembled only in her thoughts. She tried to move, but her limbs refused. Pain pulsed in her temple, sharp and bright. A flash of memory, a hand shoving her, cruel laughter, the tilt of iron steps beneath her boots. Then sky. Then ground. Then the long stretch of nothing. Somewhere far off, a hawk cried. The prairie wind moved slow, curling through the grass as if to hush her suffering. She turned her face to it, lips dry, whispering something she herself could not hear. Miles away, a horse's hooves struck rhythm into the silence. The cowboy rode alone, as he had for years. His hat-shadowed eyes grown accustomed to loss, his heart a country of echoes. He was not searching for anyone. He had long stopped believing the world had anything new to show him. But when his mare paused, ears twitching, nostrils flaring toward the wind, he followed her gaze. He saw the figure then. Small, broken, painted in the colors of dusk. Instinct carried him forward before reason had a chance to intervene. The horse slowed beside her body. He dismounted, his boots sinking into soft soil. She wasn't dead. Not yet. Her chest rose in small, defiant tremors. He knelt, brushing hair from her face. The sight stilled him. She was young, no more than 28, though her eyes, when they flickered open, were old with miles and hurt. She looked at him as though she didn't believe he was real. He said nothing. Words, he knew, were cheap in moments like these. He lifted her carefully, the weight of her body both fragile and infinite. Her dress, torn at the seams, bore colors that once might have danced in sunlight, turquoise, red, yellow, but now hung muted by dust and blood. As he mounted the horse with her in his arms, her head fell softly against his shoulder. She smelled of smoke, earth, and something faintly sweet, like rain before it falls. The journey back to his ranch took hours. The land unrolled in silence, miles of pale grass and dying light. Every now and then she stirred, whispering half-formed words that dissolved against his coat. He didn't ask what happened. He had seen enough cruelty to know the shape of it without needing its story. When they reached his cabin, night had already drawn its curtain. He carried her inside, laid her on a wool blanket by the fire, and fetched water from the basin. Steam curled into the air as he cleaned the blood from her brow. She winced once but did not cry. There was a strength in her silence that unsettled him. He found himself speaking without meaning to. Told her his name was Samuel. That he lived alone with the horses and the ghosts of things he once wanted. She did not respond, only watched him through the flicker of the flames. Her eyes, though tired, held a quiet intelligence, as if she saw through all the armor he wore. By dawn she could stand. He helped her to the porch, the horizon painted in soft gold. She thanked him in a voice so gentle it seemed the morning paused to hear it. She told him she had been traveling west on the train. A man had offered kindness, then turned cruel. Others had joined. When the train slowed for water, they pushed her out, laughing. No one stopped them. She landed among stones and stars. He listened, hands tightening around his coffee mug. The world, he thought, could be merciless. Yet here she was, still standing. He asked her name. She hesitated before saying it. Mara. The sound hung between them like a promise neither understood yet. Over the following days, she helped with the horses despite her healing wounds. She moved with quiet grace, every gesture deliberate, humble. Sometimes he caught her staring toward the horizon, eyes wet with something he didn't name. When he asked what she was thinking, she said softly, "The train doesn't stop for the ones who fall." He didn't answer. There was nothing to say. That evening, as the sun sank low and the fire licked the logs, a faint rumble trembled through the earth. Samuel looked up from his seat, brow furrowing. Hoofbeats, distant, but closing in. Mara froze, her hand clutching the edge of the table. Her voice, barely a whisper, "They found me." Outside, the wind rose, stirring dust into the twilight. He stood, reaching for the rifle above the door. In her eyes, fear flickered like lightning over water. The hoofbeats grew louder. 3 riders, maybe 4. The kind of men who didn't come for mercy. Samuel glanced once at her, saw not weakness, but resolve, sharp and clear. Whatever had begun between them in silence was now bound by danger. The riders crested the ridge. Shadows against the dying light. Samuel stepped onto the porch, rifle steady, heart steady. Behind him, Mara stood in the doorway, her turquoise dress trembling in the wind. The train whistle sounded again in the distance, low, haunting. The same song that had thrown her into his life. Only this time, it did not fade. It lingered, long and mournful, as the riders approached and the fire inside the cabin cracked like the start of war. Gunfire shattered the quiet. The first shot ripped through the evening air, echoing across the plains like thunder breaking a sermon. Samuel dropped low behind the porch rail, rifle drawn. Splinters burst from the post near his shoulder. Mara cried out from the doorway but did not flee. She stood as if her fear had burned itself away, replaced by something colder, memory, perhaps, or defiance. The riders had come, and they would not leave without blood. He counted 3 shapes moving through the dust, their faces hidden beneath wide brims and arrogance. The leader's voice carried over the wind, calling out demands laced with cruelty. He wanted the woman, the thief, he called her. Said she had taken something precious, something that belonged to him. Samuel said nothing. His finger tightened on the trigger, and the world narrowed to a heartbeat and a single choice. The shot he fired struck the man's hat clean off. The others scattered, returning fire. Bullets screamed past the cabin walls, tearing splinters from the doorframe. Smoke and fear tangled in the air. Mara crawled toward the window, clutching a small leather pouch against her chest as though it were her last heartbeat. Samuel turned, saw her trembling, and realized, whatever was in that pouch was why she had been thrown from the train. He moved beside her, reloading, his breath steady. She met his eyes and whispered, "They think I carry gold. But it's not gold." Her voice broke, heavy with something more than exhaustion. "It's my mother's locket. My only thing left." She opened the pouch, revealing a tiny silver oval engraved with a feather. Inside, a miniature portrait, 2 women, both wearing turquoise. Her mother's face, smiling. The gunfire ceased for a moment, silence stretching thin as wire. Then the leader's voice again, colder now. He offered mercy if Samuel handed her over. Promised the man could walk away, no harm done. Samuel's jaw set like stone. He had known loneliness all his life, but not cowardice. He shouted back, his words low and sharp as gravel, that she would stay where she was. The battle resumed. He took one down with a clean shot, another grazed his arm. Blood darkened his sleeve, hot and slick. Pain clawed through him, but he stayed upright. Mara pressed a hand to his wound, her fingers slick with red, whispering prayers she barely remembered. When the dust finally settled, the prairie went still. 2 men lay motionless on the grass, and one fled into the distance, his horse kicking up the dusk. The leader lay face down near the fence line, his pistol empty, his mouth filled with dirt. Samuel leaned against the porch post, the rifle slipping from his grasp. The world blurred at the edges. Mara knelt beside him, holding his face between her palms. He tried to speak, but she hushed him with the gentleness of someone who has known too much loss. The fire inside flickered low, casting their shadows long against the walls. He had saved her, but she had brought something back to him, something he didn't know he had lost, the ache of meaning. She stayed at his side until the bleeding stopped. Dawn came quiet, painted in amber light that touched the wounded earth. He woke to find her sitting by the window, eyes distant, the locket open in her hands. She told him about her tribe beyond the western ridge, about her mother who had believed the land remembered every kindness ever given. Mara had been on her way to return the locket to her mother's resting place when the men attacked her for what they thought was treasure. Samuel listened. For the first time in years, he felt something shift inside, a tender, dangerous warmth. He told her she could stay until she wished to go. She smiled faintly, saying she might. But her gaze lingered on the horizon, where the sun rose like an unanswered question. Days passed. He healed slowly, teaching her to mend fences, to ride the gentle mare by the stream. Sometimes she would hum old songs, the melody light as wind through the reeds. At night they spoke little, yet silence between them became its own kind of conversation. But peace, Samuel knew, was never a promise, only a pause. One afternoon, while gathering firewood, he found fresh tracks near the ridge. 3 horses, heavy prints heading toward the ranch. The ones who fled had returned, perhaps with more. He followed the trail to the edge of the bluff and saw dust rising in the distance. When he turned back, Mara stood in the doorway, the locket glinting against her throat. The wind tugged her hair across her face, and for a moment she looked both fierce and fragile, as if the land itself held its breath for her. She called his name once, softly, as the thunder of hooves began again. He met her eyes, saw in them both fear and resolve, the reflection of all that had brought them here. Then the wind shifted, carrying the echo of a train whistle from miles away, long, haunting, familiar. A sound that spoke of leaving and never returning. Mara's lips parted, her voice trembling into the wind. They'll never stop, Samuel. Not until I do. He stepped closer, hand brushing the locket, his voice quiet but certain. Then we don't run. The whistle faded, leaving only silence and the storm gathering on the horizon. And in that silence, between them, the first drops of rain began to fall.